this morning. Good morning, Ranvir. And there's been a lot of criticism, hasn't there, that the government isn't doing enough to support living standards. So what's the Chancellor doing today? Is it going to be enough to placate people?
This is one thing that's going to put serious pressure on the Conservatives in the coming months. It is indeed that growing cost of living that everybody is experiencing, not just with the fuel shortages and the delivery problems with supermarkets and so on, and the question whether we'll have turkey for Christmas. All of that withstanding, there is also, of course, the £20 cut in universal credit at the same time as being announced as the £12 billion that's going to be raised from a new social care national insurance hike. So there is an enormous amount of pressure, particularly in those red wall seats that the Tories won so spectacularly, giving Boris Johnson an 80-seat majority in the Commons. Those MPs in those areas are feeling extremely worried now that their constituents who voted Tory, believing they were a low-tax party, believing that their living standards would go up, are now going to be suffering greatly by losing perhaps over £1,000 with this universal credit cut of £20 a week. Jake Berry is one of those backbench Conservatives who is very concerned that actually the standard of living is going down, and this does not bode well for the Conservatives. Well, there has been a huge tussle between the Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak over the summer, especially about the furlough scheme coming to an end and how we're going to try and improve people's standard of living. The Prime Minister, I think, in his heart would probably happily borrow more to spend more. But in fact, Rishi Sunak appears to have won that battle. And I suppose the strategy is to make things harder in the short term than when there is an election in a few years' time to introduce some tax cuts to try and woo the voters back.
Ranvir, thanks very much. More details from the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, when he appears on the programme at 8:30 this morning.
He wants to make the United Kingdom the most exciting place on the planet to live and to work, apparently. That's what his plan is. But of course, one wonders how much all of that would cost. And at the same time, they are now cutting the £20 a week uplift for universal tax. And when you talk to Tories who are here and you talk to those MPs who won their seat in those red wall areas and gave Boris Johnson that enormous 80-seat majority in the Commons, they are very worried that working class voters and those who turned away from Labour and turned towards Tories in the last election are going to be feeling that crisis of the cost of living increasing more than perhaps traditional Tory voters. And there is a poll done by the Taxpayers Alliance that suggests exactly the same. And those are the worries, really, that people here, not just actually those who have switched votes, but long-standing backbench Tory MPs themselves are saying, look, with the furlough scheme ending, we've had this hike of £12 billion being raised for social care with a new national insurance hike, and the universal credit coming to an end, that £20 extra a week could cost £1,000 or more for many, many people. Here's Jake Berry, who was a minister for the Northern Powerhouse. He's extremely concerned about what all of this means. And there has been a huge tussle between the Chancellor and Boris Johnson, but it does appear that perhaps the Chancellor has won on this one, where he'll be saying privately and within those meetings that the strategy essentially will be to let's raise taxes, let's try and improve some living standards, and then by the time another election comes along, we can again, as the Tory party, be the party that cuts taxes. But it's a gamble.
Ranvir, thanks very much. And the Chancellor will be on the programme.
Well, he wants to make the UK the most exciting place on the planet to live, and there's certainly going to be a narrative being developed over the next few days here at conference that the problems that we've got with a lack of people doing the jobs that we need them to do, either in hospitality or in driving HGVs or whatever the problem might be, is that actually Labour would just want to increase immigration again. And of course, we voted for Brexit, and what the Tory party will be trying to do over the next few days is say, look, yes, it's going to be painful, we're feeling that now, but in the end it will mean that wages will go up. Now, Rishi Sunak, of course, has got to deal with the fallout from the furlough scheme ending, from the fact that he has stuck to his guns over cutting that £20 a week uplift in universal tax. That comes in on Wednesday, which will cost lots of people who live in those red wall Tory seats now, those 80 majority that gave Boris Johnson this incredible majority in the Commons. those voters in those areas are going to be hit the hardest possibly, in those northern areas, in those working class seats, those places where those voters turned from Labour to the Tory party. And Rishi Sunak has got a real problem with trying to woo those people back because, of course, he wants to increase taxes. Boris Johnson doesn't, but I think he's had to come round to Rishi Sunak's way of thinking. Here is Jake Berry, who was a minister for the Northern Powerhouse, and he's extremely worried about the combination of the crisis of the increase in living costs. I think there's a couple of things hanging over the Tory members here. They are very worried about this issue. Of course, it's only October now. Say we were still in some sort of fuel crisis or whatever by November, 4 weeks from Christmas, that would be a problem. But also, I think the strategy essentially is, from Rishi Sunak's point of view, raise taxes now, try and increase living standards. Then by the time there's another general election, again, the Tory party can be the party of cutting taxes. But it's a gamble.
Ranvir, thanks very much.